Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Ronnie and I am the host facilitator in the Realised Consciousness transformational community here on YouTube and on Facebook also. The group is dedicated to healing, transformation and the sustained realization of consciousness. And in this video today I'm going to speak about the 4 stages of conscious evolution. And these are a guiding structure that I have put together to help your reflection in the experience of your conscious life, of your spiritual journey, to determine where you are at, what the pitfalls may be, what the characteristics of each phase is, and what to expect on the road ahead as well. So the 4 stages of conscious evolution, it's not a science, it's just a guide, to offer reflection. So the first stage is the initiation stage. Second stage is the resolution stage. Third stage is the reconnection stage, and the 4th stage is the realization stage. So stage 1, initiation. Now let's step a little back from step 1. Often, for many of us, we realize the spiritual experience through having what people term as a spiritual awakening or an epiphany. So for many of us, not all of us, but for many of us, we will have experienced a spiritual awakening of sorts, and that has like shifted our life experience and put us on a trajectory of spiritual experience, learning about all the different facets of spirituality, all the different theologies and religious philosophies involved. I know some people have, particularly in stage 1, have an aversion to religion, but you know what I mean. We learn about meditation, we learn about the energy body, chakras, the properties of crystals and alternate healing modalities, shamanism, all of this information comes to us in stage 1 initiation. And like I mentioned, it's normally a spiritual awakening of sorts that will trigger us, that will initiate us into the initiation phase 1 of the experience of ourselves within this framework. So that spiritual awakening often as well comes as a result of an intense experience in our life, an intense adverse experience, just say like a car accident or contracting some serious medical condition, or a close loved one dies, or unfortunately very often it takes such an intense experience to wake us up from the tick-tock conditioned mindset of being another brick in the wall within this society. So you may be able to relate to this, So here we are moving into the initiation phase 1. And that is for us mainly in the Western world. We will step into this experience and we may become, through the awakening, we may become like very sensitive to energy. We become sensitive to the psychic, perhaps, and we stumble across information synchronistically, that will lead us to learning about meditation or learning about pranayama, breathing techniques. And so, the journey starts there, and it's very often we experience synchronicities quite considerably through this phase that leads us to a particular book a particular teaching, a particular teacher, you know, a particular person, and so we gain knowledge and insight into these other realms of experience, these other realms of living, you know. That isn't obviously the same as the TikTok normal societal way of life. And so the journey starts in phase one. We've got our chakras, we've got our crystals, we've got our incense, and we're sitting down in our meditation mats and things like that. All good, you know. A whole new other world opens up for us. But care needs to be taken within the initiation phase, because the ego and its woundingness and its past trauma and all of these things are still resident within the physiology, you know. So, you know, there's the potential for certain traps and delusions that might send us a little bit wayward within the initiation phase one, you know. With that spiritualized ego, there might be a potential of thinking that you're more special, you're more awake, you've got more psychic powers than those unawakened people, and you know, you're in touch with the cosmos, and you've got special healing powers, and you can heal animals remotely on the other side of the world and things like that, you know, and you may prop yourself up in a pedestal. I'll tell you what, you know, I wrote the book, I wore the t-shirt during my phase one experience. Well, you know, I fell into the traps and the pitfalls of specialness and delusion. So that's why I know about it. That's why I'm able to communicate about it in this day. But with any luck, the stage one initiate will progress into stage two, which is resolution. And quite often, the progression into stage two also can be initiated through negative or challenging circumstances that push us beyond the sometimes perceived fakery and delusion and all of the bells and whistles, commercial bells and whistles of phase one. You know, we may realize, oh, I need to go deeper here. Something else is going on. I can't keep with this experience of being high in the clouds one day in my higher chakras, and then boom, it's dark night of the soul the next day, you know, and I've got this up and down duality going on because there's so much that hasn't been resolved within the physiology, you know. So the phase two experience, if people are fortunate enough to move in that direction, because not everyone does. Many people get stuck in the phase one phase, you know. They're identified with being a healer, they're identified with their crystals, and their sense of self-worth is pumped up by thinking they've got magic powers, so they like that, and they may remain stuck in phase one. But for those of us that desire to go further, to go deeper, to go all the way, to dedicate more to resolving ourselves, then we may step into the phase two experience, resolution. And this is the phase where the pedal is put to the metal and we really start to go deep within our unconscious mind. And we recognize our negativities, we recognize our behavioral hostilities, our unhealed trauma wounds, the shadow basically. So phase two resolution phase is the shadow healing phase, you know, where we dive deep, we go into acknowledge, purify the subconscious mind. You know, there's a lot of work in phase two. And, you know, unless truly you have gone through the phase two experience in a very deep way, then, you know, to go through the phase two experience in a very deep and dedicated way, dedicated to the resolution of your physiology, the purification of your subconscious mind, is the only way that you will get through it into phase three. So phase two is not for the half-hearted. Phase two is not for the shy and reserved and those unwilling to develop bravery and face their fears. Phase two is tough. And phase 2 remains with us throughout all of our life experience, you know. So it's all about introspection, resolving the shadow, you know, doing what's necessary for that to occur within ourselves, admitting our negativities, coming clean with our lies and our fakery and our manipulations, you know, our behavioural hostilities, the hurts that we've inflicted upon other people within this life experience, etc. So there's a lot of redemption work in phase 2, a lot of purification work. It's where the bulk of the effort, the willingness, the bravery and tenacity is required in our experience. So, like I was saying, unless you really went deep into phase 2, then you're not going to progress, you know. It's deep, it goes to the soul, it goes to the root, it goes to the core of our being. This is what we must dive deep into in order to resolve and shift our consciousness, our physiology, our physiological health, our physio-energetic purification, you know. So if you're brave enough, willing enough, have the tenacity enough to progress through phase 2, then you start emerging into the phase 3 experience. Phase 3 is a reconnection phase. Now, like I said, this is a guide. This is just for communication's sake, a guide to offer reflection for us. It's not an exact science, and it doesn't go in a linear straight line, phase 1, 2, 3. You know, it's got its peaks and its troughs and its roundabouts and things like that. But it can be considered from the point of view of experiential emphasis. So in phase 1, the experiential emphasis is on learning new things, you know, learning about, well, this multi-dimensional hyperverse, whoa, the quality of these different crystals, what chakras are, how they correlate with the physiology, meditation, different philosophies, theologies, teachers, you know. So there's a lot of new information, a new world opens up. There's a lot of emphasis there in that phase 1 experience. Phase 2, we still have the phase 1 awakeness, consciousness, energetic sensitivity, but there's a different emphasis in our phase 2 experience. It's truly about healing, deep healing, shadow work, resolution. So the emphasis shifts. Same again, we go into phase 3, reconnection phase. We still have our energetic sensitivity that was awakened within us in phase 1. We are still, you know, resolving deeply the shadow and unconscious mind as we're going into phase 3 and throughout phase 3 as well, because that healing aspect, it never finishes. Phase 2, however, it requires an intense period of it, you know, to get through the bulk of it. And so when we come out of the intense period and then we start like reconnecting, phase 3, reconnection phase, we reconnect with our body. We're not flying about in our higher chakras like in phase 1, you know. In phase 2, there's a lot of solitude in phase 2 because we're focused on what needs to be done in terms of our healing. Phase 3, when that intensity of phase 2 subsides a little bit, phase 3, we're like reconnecting with ourselves, with our body, with our humanness, if you like. You know, we're down from the spiritualized pedestal of phase 1, and we're more grounded, more connected into our humanness, you know, in that practical sense, common sense way, as people would say. But we still have our energetic sensitivity, our connection to source consciousness, etc. So, but it's more about a reconnection, like a rebalancing of ourselves to integrate all of the different layers of our being, you know, soul, spiritual, bodily, energetic, all of these different layers. Integration, balancing, reconnection with ourselves, our humanity, our humanness, reconnection with humanity. We might reconnect with the different activities and hobbies that we had before we started our spiritual life. You know, we'd come back in to, if you like, that sort of humanly normality where we started off before the spiritual awakening. But we come back in to that, we reconnect back to that everyday normality and humanity, however, still with the qualities of connection that we have, you know. I've just got a little canine visitor beside me here. A little dog's coming over for some love. So reconnection phase is phase 3. Okay, so reconnecting, integrating, attaining a balance. And as phase 3 progresses, and if we still have the willingness to progress and to move towards sustaining the realization of consciousness. So we've did a lot of the healing transformation, particularly in phase 2, and that continues, as I said, through phase 3 and phase 4. But also the realization of consciousness, where we are God connected, you know. We are rebalanced with our humanly, bodily self, you know, but still, if we have the willingness, we still progress in our consciousness. We still progress in waking ourselves up. We still progress in embracing the love of God. We still progress in the yearning for the sustained realization of consciousness as we progress towards full, complete liberation and enlightenment. So that's phase 4, you know. So in phase 3, there's a rebalancing, and there's the experience, we come to experience that wholeness, because the rebalancing, the reintegration of ourselves with all of these different layers of being, you know, we experience a wholeness, you know, more of a wholeness. A lot of the wounding has been resolved, the separation wounding, and through that wholeness, you know, we more and more embody our soul, we embody consciousness, and we more and more realize and sustain the realization of consciousness, and we progress, continued into phase 4, which becomes more, it requires of us more intricacy and integrity in our experience, you know, really getting clear, really sharpening up in our integrity, you know, not allowing any unconsciousness to take over us in any way, not allowing ourselves to experience like procrastination and to get like tied into worldly affairs and attachment with, you know, all the different attachments to the world, basically. You know, we are experiencing the balancing of our humanly, worldly, spiritual conscious experience through phase 3, but progressing into phase 4, you know, it lends towards this straightening of ourselves, this non-compromising of ourselves, and resolving from worldly experience. Whilst of course we are participating practically in the world, but we start to really, through the wholeness that is realized in phase 3 and in phase 4, we start to realize that transcendent state basically in phase 4. In phase 4 we've got a fundamental choice. We have got what we can consider the worldly dimension of experience. You know, everything in the world, all the physicality, all the situations, all the relationships, all these things. The other dimension, we've got the dimension of God, consciousness itself. We're connected to both, but in which one is our heart and is our focus truly, you know? So phase 4 really asks of us to resolve from worldly attachment and to really bring our heart and our belonging into the experience of God consciousness. Whilst the world, the humanly, bodily, worldly experience acts out and does its thing, which it will do automatically, but we become more refined in our consciousness, more enlightened in our consciousness, and that requires integrity. That requires non-compromising, and that requires us to really resolve attachment to worldly thinking, worldly situations, you know, to any of the thought perceptions that come up within us, perhaps perceptions related to, you know, judgment, criticism of other people, considering people as being this or being that, or situations as being this, as being that. We're still acting out a duality in our experience. Phase 4 asks of us to resolve the duality of experience, to resolve the unconscious judgmentalism, to resolve the unconscious criticism, the monkey mind, We're familiar with that. But as I said, in phase 4, there's more intricate refinement and integrity that is encouraged, that is asked for in order for us to truly resolve from our attachments to the world, from our attachments to worldly thinking, But we're not doing it in such a way as where we are diverting and deviating from the experience of the body and ourselves within the world. Like in phase 1, there might be a bypass, being all spiritual and somewhat resisting worldly, practical, mundane things. Phase 3 has resulted in an integration of ourselves, so that we are able to experience that wholeness throughout the different layers of our being. So within that wholeness, within that integrated self, phase 4 asks of us, truly within our internal consciousness, to really become more intricate in our awareness, internal awareness, less compromising, zero compromising of our integrity of what we know is true in God consciousness, and to really place our heart and to live in the experience of God consciousness whilst the body and the world is doing its thing. Like I said, the both dimensions, worldly dimension, dimension of God consciousness. So we more and more through phase 4 shift truly into inner being, our internal world experience. We shift our being into a belonging with God consciousness, as God consciousness, whilst the worldly bodily experience acts out. But we are able to experience that in a way where there is a detachment, a dispassion from it. We are not affected by it, we're not judgmental of it. We're not emotionally affected by it. We're not subconsciously judgmental of it. We resolve more intricately from those unconscious impulses within ourselves, and we realize more and more true awareness, and the sustained realization of consciousness comes to be whilst we have balanced, we have integrated. The idea of self begins to dissolve. Okay, we will still communicate from being a person, we need to communicate, me, I, you, etc. But the difference is our internal world experience is resolved more and more from dualistic perception, It's resolved more and more from attachment to worldly situations, worldly thinking, whilst at the same time simultaneously our body is operating within the world experience in a very grounded, down to earth and integrated manner, So that refinement is necessary within the phase 4 experience. That integrity is necessary within the phase 4 experience in order for us to progress more and more towards the complete sustained realization of consciousness and the realization of self and liberation of self. So that there is the 4 stages of conscious evolution, which I communicate as a guide. It is basically a guide, a reflective guide for us to recognize where we may be at, what the pitfalls may be, what the sort of characteristics may be, and it assists and supports the communication and the facilitation of experience within the realized consciousness transformational community. Now we have an active community over on Facebook, same name, Realized Consciousness Group on Facebook. If this information is resonating with you, you're willing to put the pedal to the metal and progress your healing transformation and sustained realization of consciousness, then you're welcome to be part of the community and join us there too. Okay, thank you for tuning in. My name is Ronnie. Bye for now.